This past week, I was catching up on the past couple episodes, and I really enjoyed the discussion on 1 Corinthians and the different perspectives on fellowship meals, Passover, communion, etc. I just had a thought based on the interpretation on 1 Corinthians 11 that you shared, specifically that Paul's instruction was mainly regarding everyday fellowship meals and not focusing on the Passover meal in chapter 11. If this is the case, then it seems that Paul was giving instructions on how to reappropriate existing cultural expressions, i.e. mealtimes, to the community of faith. The cup before and after the meal were dedicated to idols before they came to Christ, but now these are redirected to honor Christ. Is this what you think is the case? Okay, let's stop right there, because the rest of his question is going to essentially focus on if we think it is the case. I think that the cultural aspects of the Deipnon in the first century were cross-cultural. And what I mean by that is that we see these same exact customs used at Qumran. So they break bread before and say a blessing before the meal, and then they and then they dedicate a ceremonial cup of wine. Okay, and then they I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they actually use wine a second time in their meal. Anyway, the point is that what this does is, I think what they're doing is it shows that the meal is more than just sitting down to nourish, but it is fellowshipping with other people of like mind. It is so we have to remember that eating together was a form of worship in the first century. And so this means that it didn't matter whether or not you were worshiping this God over here, or you were worshiping the God of Israel, or you were worshiping that God over there. If you were sitting down with other people and acknowledging that the meal was something that was a form of worship, this is how you started it. Now, this could be likened to something like, okay, at a wedding. We'll use a little bit more abstract, and then a little bit more solid. So at a wedding, there's always the toast, right? Whether it's the father, the bride, or the best man, right? Or sometimes there's multiple toasts, right? People will stand up and they'll give a toast to the health and the wealth and the well-being of the bride and the groom. This is a tradition. So that tradition, it doesn't matter if you're doing it at a Hindu wedding. It doesn't matter if you're doing it at a Christian wedding. It doesn't matter if you're doing it at a Jewish wedding. No one sees this as being specific to a God. It's just a tradition that we do. In the same way, in America, we eat with fork and knife. Nobody sees that as a form of worship. It's just what we do in the actual meal process. Now, that's not the case around the world. You know, over in the Middle East, a lot of times people eat with their hands instead. And over in Asia, some cultures use chopsticks. Others don't. Others use fork and knife. And so the point here is that that's more about a tradition. It's not necessarily about a deity. And the same would be said about the Roman Deipnon. So we see cross-cultural elements that happen no matter what religion you are. They're just part of, it's how you start out a meal. So you start by breaking bread, which is a Thanksgiving. Remember, no one was an atheist. There's no such thing in the ancient world as someone who didn't believe in God. Everybody believed in God, whether it was the right God or the wrong gods. It was people believed in something higher. So you would break the bread to thank God or the gods for the food, and you would dedicate a cup of wine, and you do that to show that this meal had ceremonial aspects to it, that it was more than just nourishment for your body. And so Christ uses those, and Paul uses those as well. They don't see these as pagan in any way, shape, or form. Rob?
Well, the question is, did Jews just eat meals, and then all of a sudden they saw these non-Jews be like, man, we got to up our game because we're not pagans, but they dedicate, look at their devotion. Yeah, we got to up our game. So we up our devotion. So yeah, okay. So now, yeah, our meals, every meal we eat also is set apart in some special way unto our God. Is that how we're supposed to envision this? I don't think so. But there is back and forth. It's the same thing with the development of the immersion pools, the mikvaot, over history. There's development, and some of that is between. You got to remember, it's not always just Jew versus Gentile. It's Jewish group between two different Jewish groups that have a little bit of hostility or competition between them.